Try to imagine, without being too graphic about it, that Just Cause and Spider-Man had a baby with Sea of Thieves. There's a grappling hook you can use to swing between places, there are wingsuits, there are guns, and there are ships. But the islands you will sail those ships between are floating 5 miles up. Lost Skies is a co-op survival adventure game from Bossa Studios, due for release on April 18th, 2025. But I have already played the demo, so let's talk about it, shall we? Welcome to Night's Arcade, I'm Sleepless Night, and we're going to get something out of the way early before people rush to the comments to point this out. If you played, or remember others playing, Worlds Adrift from 2017, then Lost Skies and many of the things in it may look and sound quite familiar to you, and there are good reasons for that. The first is it is made by the same developer, and the second is that Lost Skies is pretty much the game that Worlds Adrift never really got the chance to be for a variety of complicated reasons, such as the latter's reliance on a technology that never really took off, and its failure to attract a large enough active player base to keep the game alive. Now, all of that might sound discouraging to some people, but I look at it this way. If a developer is so determined to make a certain game that they're willing to start all over again from scratch, even after it failed the first time, that's likely to be a game with more heart than you'll ever find in any title from any AAA developer anywhere. With the added bonus that Bossa will have learned from all the mistakes that caused the first attempt to plummet out of the clouds like a cartoon coyote I can't name for legal reasons, whose sudden realization that he ran off the edge of a cliff 8 seconds ago has once again rendered him subject to the harsh principles of gravity. So, although Lost Skies is not considered by its creators to be a sequel to or a remake of Worlds Adrift, it is, in their own words, inspired by it. And while the DNA of Worlds Adrift is certainly present in Lost Skies, the gameplay, world, and story are distinct. One of the ways in which definitely not Worlds Adrift is distinct from Worlds Adrift is that this time the game will focus on cooperative adventure rather than PvP. And while you can enjoy the game by yourself, which is good news for a Billy No-Mates like me, you can take your character and your Skyship into combat alongside your friends as you battle the various foes that Lost Skies has to offer. What I like about this is that although it does seem as though having buddies aboard one ship to man turrets when you encounter the bigger enemies would be very helpful, being in a shared world with everyone on their own ship means no captain, no leader, no arguing about whose ship you're going to sail on or what colour it's going to be, or sulking because you didn't get to call it Boaty McBoatface. You can just bring your own ship, and if you want to call it Skytanic, that's your call. In fact, Bossa states that sailing your own ships alongside those of your buddies is a big part of the vision, especially in the endgame. And having seen, heard and felt one of the larger creatures in Lost Skies emerge and fly around for a while before disappearing into the clouds, I can confidently say, "F*** that, I'll take all the help and all the spare pairs of trousers I can get before tackling one of those things." At this stage of development, I have to say that even the smallest of enemies, while presenting very little problem by themselves, become groups of respawn-inflicting death mosquitoes entirely too quickly in the game as it currently stands. And while they are still possible to destroy, there were times when the respawn at ship, scrounge for scrap, craft ammo, kill another enemy, die, respawn at ship cycle started to get on my nerves. So perhaps a little more early game balancing is in order there. I'd have to say that pretty much sums up my experience with the demo overall, really. I've only played 8 hours of it, so it's probably too early to tell, but from what I saw, the game needs a little polish here and there, but otherwise I was keen to keep playing and exploring. I found a recurring problem, for instance, to be that several button prompts seemed either infuriatingly unclear or wildly inaccurate, but perhaps this was simply a controller integration issue. I play most PC games with a controller where possible, since I find terrain traversal with mouse movement triggers my motion sickness. Ironically, because it gives you much more fluidity of movement than a controller can. Traversal in general needs a little refinement, but otherwise it is one of the things I love most about Lost Skies. Now, in the spirit of complete honesty, I have to say that terrain traversal in video games is a particular weakness for me. It will often make me throw my money at developers before I've actually had time to really assess how good the game is, which is why I love this franchise and this one. So let's just put that aside for a moment and concentrate on another huge aspect of this game: skyships. Your skyship is pretty central to Lost Skies, as you can probably imagine, and if the demo is any indication of the rate at which you will unlock things in the finished game, you can start building one pretty early in your playthrough. Now, in the spirit of complete honesty, I have to say that building your own ship in video games is a particular weakness for me and will often make me throw my money at developers before I've actually had time to assess how good the game is, which is why I'm kind of glad I got Starfield with my Game Pass subscription, to be honest, rather than having to actually pay for it. But I can't put everything I love about this game aside, so let's just dive into what's great about the vessels in Lost Skies. Firstly, the level of customization, assuming the devs keep going down this road, is pretty hardcore. When I say build your own ship, I'm not talking about snapping together parts from a virtual shelf, as is often done with these games. I'm talking about a level of building that is almost like using a very basic 3D modeling program, at least when it comes to the main hull of the craft. There are limitations on size, color, and material, but otherwise you are given a lot of freedom to sculpt the hull of your vessel. Now, one of the drawbacks I immediately noticed to this approach is that the assets you place aboard your ship won't always align with your own beloved creation, either literally or figuratively. I did almost no sculpting at all because I was keenly aware of how little time I had left to play the game before they pulled the demo, but even so, when I later tried to put a railing on the stern of the ship to stop me from accidentally running off the side of it like the aforementioned cartoon coyote, I encountered two problems. The first is that the only railings available in the demo don't match the dimensions of the sculpted edge of your ship, and I couldn't get them to overlap each other or snap to each other, so I was always left with a gap. And while ground is admittedly a relatively flexible concept in a game where even the ground isn't actually on the ground, that doesn't change the fact that if you run off the side of one of these ships before it reaches an island, the only thing that swimming certificate is going to be any good for is writing your last will and testament on the back of, as gravity compels you to make your handwriting as legible as possible while the fresh but relatively unsupportive air is forced up your nostrils at 120 miles an hour. The second reason the railing on my ship proved to be about as safe as a bacon shark cage is that my character just walks right over it as though it wasn't there, which is an unfortunate drawback to the fluidity of that terrain traversal I was talking about earlier. You see, swinging about on ropes isn't the only thing that made me throw Spider-Man into the baby mixture earlier, which, now that I say it out loud, is a sentence I should probably have thought a bit more about before recording this. No. Whatever species the characters you play as belong to, climbing is clearly in their genes, as you can simply crawl up virtually any surface you encounter with remarkable ease. Paired with the grappler, the glider, and the wingsuit, wall crawling already makes the traversal system in this game one of the most robust I have ever seen. But on the Lost Skies website, the devs list all the things I just did, followed by the words, "and more mobility options," which is honestly making me wonder what else they could be talking about. Although you can get creative with objects in the environment using Atlas, which is the unique mineral which gives certain creatures in the game, as well as skyships and presumably the islands themselves, their anti-grav properties. Once you've retrieved enough of this mineral, you can use it to craft Atlas lifters to move objects that would otherwise be too heavy. You can get carried away though, as I discovered when I accidentally lost a stone block the size of a Volkswagen camper van into the clear blue sky like a toddler at the zoo watching a cherished balloon disappear over the giraffe enclosure. Overall, there are quite a few things in this game that need more polish, besides those already mentioned. Respawning is a little bit hit and miss at times, to say the least. Firing weapons feels frustratingly limp and lackluster. A few of the animations aren't quite as smooth as you'd like them to be, and there isn't much in the way of character customization so far, although, if the descriptions of the different races are anything to go by, lovers of deep game lore are really going to enjoy it. But other than a few little gripes, the game is already pretty sturdy, so I have high hopes for its future when it releases into early access on April 18th, and I'm confident you'll see a lot of it here at the arcade as it is slowly tweaked and adjusted before it reaches 1.0. In the meantime, the Lost Skies Island creator is still available on Steam and it is free to download and tinker with, so take a look at that if world building is your thing. That's all from me for the time being, but you can follow me in any or all of the places linked in the video description or on the Nights Arcade channel header. Otherwise, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment if you have something to say, and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me in the future. But until next time, from Nights Arcade, this is Sleepless Night saying nighty-night. Outro!